Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum, Future of Finance. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then we'll turn the floor over to our esteemed opening keynote speaker. First, we would like to take a moment to thank today's sponsors, Vertex, TripActions, and Divvy. Our sponsors are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please use the hashtag ArgyleDigital and follow us on Twitter at ArgyleExecForum. Also, be sure to follow Argyle on LinkedIn for special announcements. I would like to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we have curated based on the feedback we have received over the years from our members. We have worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, we want to hear from you. So during each session, we encourage you to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box on your screen. Following each presentation, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on your questions. Thank you again for joining us today. Now, let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Peter McKenzie, Chief Financial Officer and Corporate Director, Anticipa Real Estate. We are excited to have Peter with us for his opening keynote presentation titled The Rockstar CFO. Welcome, Peter. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nick. And it's a pleasure to be here with you, with the Argyle Group again. Maybe some of you have seen me before, but it's always good to be back. And I'm going to start with a couple of questions for you. The first one is a very simple one. If you can just drop in the chat for me where you are dialing in from today. There's a short delay, I know, between the system that the guys use and Zoom. But if you can just put in the chat where you're dialing in from. I think most of you are stateside, and I'm actually based in Barcelona in Spain. So probably a few of us, we're a few thousand miles or kilometers apart. Just waiting to see some responses in the chat box. And while I do that, I'm going to fire my second question at you for today. And it's again simple, a yes or no answer. The question is, are you a good loser? Are you a good loser? Yes or no? Well, I see that. I can see Seattle, Missouri, Galloway, New Jersey, North Carolina, Florida, Vermont, Virginia. Excellent. Lots of people from all over the states. Baltimore, Seattle. Excellent. Home of grunge. Okay, and then I'm seeing some answers. Good losers. So there's a couple of yeses, a no, a yes, a yeah, a no, a sometimes. Excellent. No, no, no. Sometimes, no. Okay, thank you for that little sample. And the first thing I'm going to say to those of you that answered yes, you are good losers, may I say thank you. Thank you for making the world a better place. And thank you for putting up with the rest of us who said no. People like me, because I am a terrible, terrible loser. And I actually follow this quote that you may have seen over your lives. I don't know. But there's a Vince Lombardi, who of course is a famous US football coach, said, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. And that is how I've lived most of my life. And I put this bitterness, this horrible nature of mine of being a bad loser, down to one person in my life. And that person was, in fact, my big sister. Now, my big sister, when I was 8, she was 4 years older than me. Well, in fact, she still is, because she's still alive. But back then, being 8 and having a sister that was 12 was a big, big deal because she would beat me at anything. We would wrestle, we would fight, we would do physical things together, and she would crush me. And that, for a young male, was very, very bad for my, ego. And then she would thrash me at any other game we played. We'd play all sorts of things, board games like Monopoly, for example. She would control the money, she would control the pieces, she'd control the cards, and basically she'd beat me every single time. Until one day, I followed her tactics, and I got this close to beating her when she did the old trick. She stood up and just flipped the board onto the floor, and that was the end of the game. The pieces went everywhere. So I was forced to do something different. I was forced, like all small children, to go to my room and fantasize, to think what it would be like to be number one, to be the best, to be a rock star on stage, or to be a winner of an Olympic gold medal, number one, or to score the winning goal in the World Cup final for England. Yeah, some chance of that. We never, when we're kids, we never dream about coming in second, getting the silver medal, or being support staff around the back, or being good losers. We want to be number one. But of course, life isn't like that. Reality bites. We go to school, we go to college, we go to university, we get a job, we become CFOs, like most of the people in the audience today. We then get overworked, overstressed, overwhelmed, and some people even get to the stage of burnout. So here's my next question for you. Do you feel sometimes you have too much work to do? I'll let you think about that and put it in the chat. And as there's a delay, I'm going to carry on by saying that some people get out of that mire. Some CFOs make it to another level. They get to a level where they're more comfortable, where they're more effective, and they operate far better than the majority. These people are the rockstar CFOs, the ones that we're aspiring to reach, the people we want to be like. And today, this is what I want to go through. What is a rockstar CFO? What does it look like? I'm seeing some answers coming through. Of course, yes, of course you're overworked. I'm not worried about it, said someone. I'm overworked, I'm not worried. Great, that's good, stoic. And then someone said no. Okay, that's rare for CFOs. Most CFOs I know are pretty overworked, but it's okay. I mean, if maybe you're in that top category of rockstar. So what does a rockstar look like? Why isn't everyone a rockstar CFO? And then how do these rockstars, what do they do differently? How do they challenge the status quo? Because they don't do things like the majority. I can see a few more yeses there. Delegation is key. We'll talk about that in a second. Delegation is, of course, key. So what does a rockstar CFO look like? Well, that was what I was asking myself about 7 years ago. I was in a terrible, terrible place because, in fact, I had, at that stage, I was out of work. I'd been working for about a year in this new company, and I'd decided to leave. Now, prior to that, I had worked for 20 years at Citigroup. I had a long career. I'd done lots of different roles across Europe. Worked in London, I worked in Madrid, worked in Portugal as well for a while, here in Barcelona. And my career just went up and up. I worked hard, and the harder I worked, the more successful I became. And that was my recipe for success. I was mainly in CFO roles. I did have some COO roles as well, but generally my career was good. But after I got to 20 years in Citi, I decided to do something different. I left to join a PE firm that had a big real estate portfolio here in Spain, and I joined a very difficult CEO. Now, I worked hard. I put everything I could into that job, but it was never enough, my CEO. He got more and more frustrated, so I did more work. I put in 12-hour, 13-hour days, weekends, but nothing seemed to go right. He got frustrated, I got completely frustrated, and I left after a year. And I was sitting there thinking, well, maybe that's it. Maybe I don't go back to being a CFO ever again. Maybe my luck is out. But instead of just thinking that way, instead of looking for a therapist, I got a coach. I got a coach who was a lady that had been a very, very successful CFO here in Europe. And she looked at what I'd done. And she said to me, she quoted to me this book by a guy called Marshall Goldsmith, which says, what got you here won't get you there. What got you here won't get you there. And what she was saying, to step up into an even higher role, you need to change your tactics. So I went away, I was coached by her, it was fantastic. I went away and studied what great CFOs do. I spoke to people that I knew, my network. I joined Steve Roswell's CFO University, you may have heard of that. I read all I could to see what modern day successful CFOs were doing. And then I got another job. I got a job with Blackstone. So I now work for Blackstone, the PE firm, another real estate company. And I've been there for 7 years. And I've been the CFO. I then became the CFO and corporate director with IT and operations. And in fact, recently, about a month ago, I became the general manager of this firm. We look after about 12 billion euros of real estate assets here in Spain. So I guess I can say I got my career back on track. And then I wanted to share with you what some of my colleagues and friends told me back then, what they thought a rockstar CFO actually looked like. And I found 10 words that I think sums it up. 10 words beginning with C. So here they are. Here's the first set. The first are rockstar skills of the CFO. So you can see 5 different things I've listed here that great rockstar CFOs have these abilities. So I'd like to maybe concentrate on just 1 or 2 because we haven't got time to go through them all. But the first one I think is key, cross-functional expert. So today's rockstar CFOs do not just do finance, they do far more than that. So I'd like to ask you another question. There's a delay on the chat, but I'd like to ask you to drop in the chat box if you do something more than just finance. Could be IT, could be HR, could be control, compliance, whatever it may be. Drop in the chat some of the other activities you are responsible for, or none if you only focus on being a CFO, pure finance. Be interested to see what you say there. So in what I've seen, cross-functional experts, CFOs do more. And there are 2 main areas. IT, thank you so much, Lindsay. So Lindsay says IT. IT for me, technology is absolutely key because technology drives so much of what the CFO does today. Of course, we look after digitalization, processes within our companies, but not just that, it's actually the data that we need to provide to our businesses. Data today is no longer accounting data. It's too historical. It's no longer relevant. We need real-time data, we need KPIs, we need the ability to use data warehouses, data marts, cut and use that data to actually make decisions real-time. So the businesses that we manage, it makes a perfect fit that CFOs look after IT, apart from obviously managing the CapEx. So I'm looking down here, I can see there's HR, IT facilities, legal risk management, operations, legal risk management, okay, communications, some compliance work, IT. So a few of you have IT, a few of you have some more traditional roles like HR. Obviously, some people are more general because they have, maybe smaller companies that look after things like compliance control. But technology is one, whereas if you're not in the technology space, I would really, really recommend you get in there because that is where the future is for the CFO. Obviously, driving things like RPAs, driving automations. We've all seen this chat GPT thing coming the last few days in artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is here and it is going to take away the traditional CFO finance role. So we have to be involved. The rockstar CFOs look after IT. I can see HR, strategy. Thank you for that. So the other one I normally see is also operations. There's definitely a big fit between finance and operations, because obviously to streamline your end-to-end processes, to reduce costs, to put in again automation through IT, that also fits with the goal of the traditional CFO looking to reduce costs. So they're the two areas that most of the rockstar CFOs are moving into: technology, operations, and then some of those traditional roles we've seen: HR, compliance, audit, tax, those type of things. The second thing on this list here, at least, or this list, I should say, is creator of value. So great rockstar CFOs are able to express what their companies do and show and create value for the companies through their strategies and articulate really well what the company does. They're almost like pseudo CEOs. They're able to step in to the CEO role in the sense that they can go to the market, and sometimes even on the market, we know that investors prefer to see the CFO giving the results and talking through what's going on than the CEO. So it's really important that CFOs are right next to their businesses. They can talk about the value proposition, the unique selling point of the products that you may have in your company. They can talk about the customer satisfaction scores, the customer journey. They can talk through the processes. You know, it's such a global view that the rockstar CFO has and is able to see the whole company and add value. And it's far removed from the traditional CFO finance director role of probably 20 years ago. So again, the rockstar creates value for their company. Then there's some other things I've listed here. I won't go into them though now. I'm going to flip over to what I consider to be the attributes. When speaking to people, and I've interviewed a lot of people, and some of this stuff is going to go into a book I'm going to call The Rockstar CFO, through the interviews I had with other CFOs. And here's a couple of things, or a few things they said. So I'll touch on a couple. Courage, courageous leadership. So the CFO, the rockstar CFO, has to be courageous, has to be able to make decisions in tough moments. And we've been facing difficult economic climates over the last 4 or 5 years, ever since COVID, and then we've had supply chain issues, and now we've got inflation and interest rate and debt costs rising, having to reduce costs. All these things require decisions from the CFO. So, and they're difficult sometimes, because sometimes we need to reduce people and we need to make decisions that really do impact our whole company. Also, not just that, CFOs manage conflict, they manage negotiation. Often they have to do things that are unpopular. Often they're quite on their own, right? Isolated from other parts of the company, because they have to make decisions and stand away from the rest of the people that they work with. So all these things require courage. And I think for great leadership anyway, you need to have courage. But the best CFOs definitely step up, make decisions, stand up when it counts. Then number 9, I think, is another good example: the collaborative team building role of the CFO. The rockstar CFO is everywhere, across their companies. They are, I mean, as CFOs, we do have a global vision of what is going on throughout the company. We see everything end to end. And it's one of the few positions where someone has that ability to see the whole business and the whole operation together. So here, sometimes the CFO needs and has the power to actually influence other people, to get things done within the organization that require other skills, that, you know, not just authoritative skills, but collaborative skills. So even some of the initiatives around diversity, inclusion, if you have ESG type initiatives going on, all of these things can sit with the CFO, because the CFO, a rockstar CFO, is able to actually influence the whole of the organization. Now, I had a coach, I am now a coach to CFOs. And I find that this is one of the areas a lot of the CFOs that I coach, they ask for more, how they can grow their influence, how they can grow their executive presence. And this is what's required when you don't have line authority over people that you need to do things for you. So here's a few things. We're going to talk about challenging the status quo in a second as well. So the question then comes back, so why aren't we all rock stars? If we can list out what the top people do, why aren't we all rock stars? And that is a very, very good question. But there's a reason. There's something that gets in the way. It's our mindset, right? I always like to bring, I'm always talking about my brain. I have my brain here. I always bring it on talks. taken that on stage when I speak live. It's always good to bring your brain. Don't forget your brain wherever you go. But it's our brain is sometimes our biggest enemy. And within our mindset, some of the things that block us from becoming a better CFO or stepping up, things like stress, things like having doubt, imposter syndrome. People, worry about whether they're going to be good enough to reach a better level. Busyness, another one. Everyone's so busy, down in the weeds, closing the books, all these things. We have to look at it, because if we're going to go to another level, we can't have the excuse of always being busy. And one other that I think is very important is having no vision, not having a strategy, not knowing where you're going. Now, I'm a big fan of the Stoics, Stoic philosophy. I don't know if you know of it, but there's a guy called Seneca. He's one of the great Stoic philosophers. And he said this: if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Of course, that includes women as well. But back in the Roman times, they were a little bit more machista, as we say in Spanish. But men, women, if you don't know where you're going to, no wind is favorable. So we can be super efficient at our jobs, and we can do more and more and packing more tasks into our days, but be sailing in the wrong direction. And that was exactly what I was doing 7 years ago in that job, which didn't work out for me. So there we must have a strategy. It's important to fix a strategy, and a coach can help you with that. So then I'm going to talk lastly about how to challenge the status quo. Rockstar's challenged status quo. So I'm going to throw you a picture here of myself. This is not me. This is a friend of mine who's Turkish. The guy over there is a younger version of me, probably about 9 years ago. And the guy in the middle, I know that you're not big soccer fans always in the States, but he is Leo Messi. So we used to play here in Barcelona. I met Leo about 8, 9 years ago. I consider him my friend now. Well, we met for about 10 minutes, so maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration. But I'm not going to talk about this photo and what happened here. He was a very nice guy, by the way. I'm going to talk about when I saw him play football in the Camp Nou in Barcelona. The first time I saw him, Barcelona were playing Real Madrid. And towards the end of that game, there's about 10 minutes to go, and the crowd were getting very restless, 100,000 people in the stadium, because Barcelona were losing 1-0 to their biggest rivals. And people began to shout. Guy next to me began to shout at Leo Messi. Messi, muévete el culo. It's like, wow. I looked at him. This is Leo Messi. See, Leo Messi was walking around the pitch. He wasn't running. He was walking. But then suddenly he got the ball and everything changed. It was like an explosion. He was suddenly weaving in and out of Madrid defenders. He got to the edge of the area and boom, the ball was in the back of the Madrid goal. The crowd roared, goal! And then they all began to sort of go, Messi, Messi, like he was a god. And of course, Leo Messi is a GOAT, the greatest of all time. He is a footballing god. And the point here is that Messi doesn't run flat out all the time. He conserves his energy. He waits for the moments that have the biggest impact. And that is the secret to becoming great. Here is another great person. We have a man who still holds the world record for the 100 meters. He set that 9.58 seconds back in 2009, still not beaten. A sprinter that sprints and then rests. So the old question, is life a marathon or a sprint? I think it's not necessarily a marathon. If we looked at it like a sprint, then we'd be more effective. Look at the difference between these two men. They have Usain Bolt, who is muscular, lean, he looks really healthy. And this guy looks a bit skinny, looks a bit worn, he's constantly running, constantly working. There's a difference. Okay, he's also a great athlete, Eliud Kipchoge, the world record holder of the marathon. He ran that in 2 hours, 1 minute and 9 seconds just last year. So a fantastic athlete. But the point here is that if you work flat out all the time, it's not as healthy as if you conserve your energy. Conserving energy is the trick. We can be consistent or it can be a flat line. We know what flatlining means in life and in death. So we need to conserve our energy. Think about how you use your energy over the day. it's been proven that there's a thing called the ultradian rhythms, where people can work optimally for around 90 minutes at a time, but then we need a break. We need to get out. We need to go for a walk. I tell the people I coach to get outside, get some sunlight, get some air, because you come back and you're more effective. So don't allow your schedule to fill with back-to-back Zoom meetings, one after the other. You need to break. You need to manage your energy to get to rockstar status. I'll close by saying this last point, that you have to challenge the status quo. Someone said that only dead fish go with the flow, right? Don't be a dead fish. Go against what everyone else is doing if you want to be successful. There's many things you can do. You can learn to say no more often. You can reject meetings that people give you that are recurrent, that don't add value, that where there are too many people. You can shut your door, not let people in. These are very radical approaches, but I challenge the people I talk to put these things into place, to not follow the norm, because you need to create space to be more effective. There was a German general who spoke about putting all of his troops in his army into different categories. It was interesting because he said, listen, I can put all of my troops into these 4 boxes. The stupid, lazy ones, these are the main troops. And he said, these main troops, leave them alone. The stupid, lazy, 80% of people, just let them do the day work. But he said the hardworking, intelligent people are the ones that do all the real work, right? These are the normal CFOs, hardworking, intelligent, working all the time. He then said people that are stupid and hardworking, get rid of them. They can cause a lot of damage. But then the stars are the lazy, intelligent ones, the ones that conserve their time, conserve their energy, and then make it to the top. So I've gone through that very quickly. I'm aware of the time. I'm just going to say, when you get back from this conference, try and think of one thing you are going to do to challenge the status quo. Put barriers. Don't go to all the meetings. Think about what you can do to do things differently, to conserve your energy. Think about being a bit of a rebel, and it will help you create time and energy to reach the top. If you're interested in what I've said today, here are my details. Maybe you can take a photo of that. If you do reach out to me, that's my website in the circle, my LinkedIn, my mail. You can, I'll send you an energy management set of tools, which are very helpful, and happy to have a very brief coaching session with anyone who is having any challenges at the moment. Love to go through that, love to speak to other CFOs, and love to hear what you have on your plate and what things are stopping you from becoming more effective. We've gone through the 10 things that make up a rockstar CFO. So here you can take a snap of me standing in front of these 10 items if that is what you can aspire to have better performance. And I'll leave it there. I'll leave it just to challenge you to think about how you can step up, what you can do differently to challenge the status quo, and to grab hold of that monopoly board, which is your life, the game of your life, and play the game under your rules. Don't always follow the norm, because that is what the very best do. They do things like Leo Messi. They do things differently. That's how they become great. So I wish you the greatest success to becoming a rockstar CFO. And with that, I'll go back to you, Nick. If we have a couple of minutes to...
Sure, if you want to sneak in a question.
Yeah. Okay, what one item did you... I looped the last one. Lindsay said, what one item do you think the CFO will need to focus on in the next 5 years? I think I mentioned it before, I think technology, taking the technology space is vital for the CFO, because finance is going to become more automated. And if you're going to step into having a role in the future and something that gives value to the business, having control of technology, understanding data, understanding predictive modeling, using artificial intelligence, I think that is the space over the next, not even 5 years, it's the next year, 2 years. And that may mean upscaling the staff you have, because the staff you have, you don't need accountants, because accountancy will disappear. You're going to need people that can understand data, can understand programming, can understand how to use that data to create dashboards that help the business actually run what they need to do. So for me, technology is the space to go. Time for another one. or?
Sure. Let's do one more question.
Okay, I can see one. Do you see the CFO taking on duties that normally a COO or CIO handle? Yes, that absolutely. Absolutely. I see more and more CFOs taking those spaces or having the CIO or the COO report to them and creating like a sort of more wider role. I go to a lot of conferences here in Europe, mainly. I do some online stuff, but when I'm in the room in the conferences, CFO conferences in Europe, I see this happening more and more. A lot of people at least have two of those hats. There's CIO and CFO or CFO and COO. Because there's just so much synergy there. Again, if you want to step into that space, if you don't step into that space, it'll go the other way. You'll get the COO will then take finance under them. So for me, it's a matter of stepping forward and demanding that these things are on your plate before someone actually takes it the other way. That's what I'd recommend.
All right. Thank you again, Peter. That was an excellent keynote. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Great to be here.